Hi, this is Alessio. Hope you're well. In this video, I'm going to take a look at the chart of Bitcoin, especially the recent beautiful rally we saw in the Bitcoin price. And I want to explain to you why what's happening in the Bitcoin price is completely the opposite of what we're seeing in the stock markets. For example, if you look at the chart of Dow Transportation, which is an important leading indicator for the stock market and the economy, the Dow Transportation is in free fall, which is a dangerous sign for the markets. On the other hand, you look at the chart of Bitcoin, completely the opposite. So what is likely going on here? By the way, guys, I also want to share with you some of the most outrageous and unbelievable comments I got on a recent video that I posted on Bitcoin. You're going to love this. And ask the question, is the episteme, is the system of thinking with regard Bitcoin, is that changing? Are we changing the episteme? And I'll explain to you what this chart means and what it potentially could mean for Bitcoin. All right, guys, join me. All right, guys, welcome back. Now, before we dig into the chart of Bitcoin and explain to you where I think Bitcoin could potentially be heading next and where the potential risks could be located, and also before we take a look at some of the comments I got on a recent video, plus this episteme chart of Bitcoin, let me share with you what I've been saying to my members now for the last several weeks, going back to October and September. Let me just play for the clip very briefly and we'll come back. For example, if Bitcoin can get above 28,185, the odds would also increase. I think the odds would increase for a move eventually towards a 61.8% golden ratio retracement here at near 40K or 39K to keep it simple. So these would be the next resistance and the key potential targets for the wave 3 between 32,660 to 40K. To me, the movements in Bitcoin over the last several months, going back to the spring, April, for example, has been A wave down, B wave up, and a C wave drop. The question is, has the C wave, the wave 2, bottomed? And are we now starting the next major wave 3? I think the odds are increasing that a bottom has already been reached or we're very close to a bottom. So to me, because this recent break and close above our resistance, again at 28,185 here, that means the odds have now increased that the bottom is in for Bitcoin. As long as Bitcoin stays above and protects 26,500, my view is that the likely ABC wave of the wave 2 correction here in Bitcoin has bottomed, and that we're likely starting the next major wave 3 up to our next target. Our next likely target on Bitcoin is going to be in this region here, which is between approximately 31,650, which is a 1382 extension. And the next one is the 1618 golden ratio extension at 32,530. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching that. Now, as you saw in the member videos, what I've been saying for the last several weeks and months is that the movement in Bitcoin for the last several months is part of an ABC correction. By the way, that is the opposite of what most analysts on YouTube have been saying. Most analysts on YouTube have been very bearish. They've been calling for a crash. In fact, I heard some analysts saying this is a double top. Some analysts were saying this was probably a head and shoulder pattern, that we're expecting a crash very soon. Again, I was against that view. And some analysts were calling for a bigger crash below 15K. Some were calling for a crash below this, below the lows here. Again, I was against these views. I maintained the view consistently for the last several months that the higher probability, so this was my higher probability view, that this is part of an ABC correction, as you heard in the member videos, and that I was expecting the market to bottom soon. Now, the one thing I did not know, the one thing I wasn't sure a few weeks ago, was whether Bitcoin had bottomed the C wave or not. And that's why I said we need to wait for a close above this level, 28K or 28,185, to confirm a bottom. And I mentioned very recently, when Bitcoin broke above this 28K level here, I put out a video and I said, very likely Bitcoin has bottomed and we're looking for much higher levels. And by the way, even in my most recent video you probably saw on Saturday, where I talked about the drop in the bear market in the stock markets, even then, I said the chart of Bitcoin looks positive. It looks bullish. It does not look bearish. In fact, here's a screenshot of my video, and I said Bitcoin is still above both its uptrend line and the weekly 21 EMA, and that's a positive sign. That was my most recent video on Bitcoin. Now, don't get me wrong here, guys. I'm not trying to tell you I got every single step, every single move in the markets and Bitcoin correct. I did not. But I think overall, in the big picture, I got the majority right than wrong. Again, as I said, most analysts were extremely bearish, calling for a crash in Bitcoin, where I maintained the view, no, this is part of an ABC correction. Okay, now, Bitcoin, as you can see here, has met some of our targets already. Some of the targets I mentioned in my previous video, for example, the prior high and also near 32K. And I'll explain to you in a few minutes where I think Bitcoin could potentially be heading in the near term. Before we go into that though, as you may recall, in a recent video where I interviewed Alexandra Overgod, who is a fantastic and brilliant crypto analyst and entrepreneur. Now she mentioned in that video that she was bullish on Bitcoin. In fact, I said this in that video. Here's the clip.
I've been bullish on Bitcoin for a long time, even while a lot of analysts have been calling for a crash in Bitcoin in the last few weeks and months. I did not. I still don't think Bitcoin is going to crash. Some analysts have been calling for a drop below 15K, drop to 10K, and I was against that view. My view has been that this move in Bitcoin for the last several months, since April and since July, is part of a correction. It's part of a corrective move, an ABC correction, before we see much higher levels. And I'm still remaining long-term bullish. Between now and December, I mean, obviously we have a few months before the end of the year. My target for Bitcoin by the end of this year is at least near 40K, which I think is achievable, 40K. Do you think that we might go to that level?
Yes, of course we can go to that level. Again, a lot of people in the market are already expecting this halving cycle to happen.
All right, guys, now let me share with you some of the comments I got on that video, which, by the way, was posted only about a week ago. So here's the first comment that you see here. By the way, I blacked out the names because I don't want to embarrass anybody here, but the first comment is very interesting. This is why more likely Bitcoin going down first. So clearly, this is somebody who disagrees with our bullish analysis of Bitcoin. Look at the second one here. Topping this week, no doubt. Selling in the news. Gonna happen. Down we go. The third one down here, fake pump for liquidity. So as you can see here, a lot of these comments are absolutely bearish on Bitcoin. They're negative. They're essentially saying, nope, doesn't matter if Bitcoin is pumping up. Okay, this next comment says here, unlikely, not until 2025. This comment over here says, hope to see another leg down to buy a little more. Eventually we'll move to above 60K. Okay, so this is one actually more bullish leaning, but nevertheless, he's expecting another leg down. This is quite an interesting one over here. False rally, laughter, and Bitcoin is a has-been and will slowly deteriorate over time. So clearly, a lot of negative sentiment and feeling towards Bitcoin. I say 20K in December, so expecting a big drop in the price of Bitcoin. This one over here. When YouTubers are bullish, it makes me bearish. A head and shoulders looks to be forming on the Bitcoin chart. This one over here. 40K by year, not possible. We will see 20 to 23K by December. So again, very bearish on the price of Bitcoin. Again, remember, these are only about a week ago, all right, when Bitcoin was about 28K, only 1 week ago. This over here, I think by far one of the most outrageous and crazy comments I've seen so far, which is having sell the news event, especially if a woman says 100K. Again, complete nonsense, but there you go. So guys, I think I've given you a feel for what people have been saying about Bitcoin over the last week or so. Now let's take a look at this particular chart over here. You may remember I mentioned this some months ago. Now if you recall, the word episteme or episteme was a word that was used a lot by one of my favorite philosophers, the French philosopher Michel Foucault, who I think is by far one of the most intelligent philosophers of the previous century. And what he said was that humanity and history go through periods or epistemes of different modes of thinking. So episteme simply means modes of thinking, system of thinking. So throughout history, humanity adopts certain ideas as being dominant and certain. And this changes over time, by the way. So I think this is absolutely correct. And also, I've applied this. I've applied Foucault's philosophy to Bitcoin and the markets. Now, if you recall, when Bitcoin was rallying, going to extremely high levels. For example, when Bitcoin was trading over the 50K or 60K region here, predominantly in this region, what was the episteme? What was the mode of thinking? Well, the episteme was of mechanism. Mechanism simply means that people were thinking about fundamentals, schmundamentals. All right. So when Bitcoin was this high, was rallying higher, the comments on social media, the majority of the sentiment was, no, price cannot go down because of fundamentals. Now, that completely changed. When Bitcoin crashed, as we know, a year ago, the episteme changed from optimism and price can never go down to the exact opposite. So the episteme was about psychology and cycles, and predominantly most people were saying price cannot go up. So that was the episteme of most of this year. All right, guys, I would say from the beginning of this year, of January, while most analysts and most people out there have been extremely bearish, while on the other hand, I've been bullish on Bitcoin for most of this year. Again, we can see the episteme of cyclicality, or the episteme of price cannot go up and will definitely drop, has been around even until recently. I showed you the comments. Even when Bitcoin was 28K, just about 1 week ago, the episteme, again, the modes of thinking, the system of thinking was, no, price cannot possibly go up, it can only go down. So now that Bitcoin has rallied and hit some of our targets, again, the question is, I think the question we should ask ourselves is the episteme going to change? Is the episteme going to slowly change from cyclicality to mechanism? I don't know yet, so I will have to wait and see. But I would be very interested to see what the comments are on this video, because I can probably bet that people are probably going to change their views on Bitcoin very soon. I'm pretty sure there are videos out there where people have already commented very bullish things. I'm guessing people are saying, yep, Bitcoin is probably going to 100K, all-time highs. By the way, guys, let me just mention one thing, that at the moment, I'm not of the view that Bitcoin is going to go to all-time highs, especially not this year. So I don't think this year is going to happen for all-time highs. As for next year, I'm doubtful at the present moment, and the reason why I'm being cautious, as I'm sure you know, is because of what's happening on the stock market. The stock market is not lining up with what we're seeing on Bitcoin. So whereas Bitcoin is looking very bullish and positive, like I said in the previous video, the stock market is showing the exact opposite. I mean, if you just take a look at the chart of Dow Transportation, as I said, the Dow Transportation, which is a very important leading indicator for the stock market and the economy, is in free fall. It's crashing hard. It's broken this uptrend line. And whenever this happens, and by the way, I know some of you are probably thinking, well, who cares about the Dow Transportation Index? The fact is, guys, the Dow Transportation Index is a key part of what's called the Dow theory. It's an important leading indicator for the economy. So when the Dow Transportation Index is crashing, as you can see here, it's a big concern. It's a concern for the markets and the economy. And also, as I said in my previous video, a Dow theory bear market was confirmed just this past week. And also the weekly chart has broken trend and also broken below its 21 moving average, which is usually a sign, it's a bad sign for the markets when that happens. Whenever this kind of pattern has occurred in the past, whenever the market fails to move above its 21 weekly moving average after dropping below it, and after it gets rejected from the 21 weekly, it usually comes right before a major drop or indeed a major bear market or downtrend. So this weekly chart of the stock market, of the S&P, is giving us signs of danger, of potential risk ahead. So guys, in my view, one of these charts is lying, okay? So either the stock market chart is wrong, or it's lying to us, or Bitcoin chart is lying to us and it's wrong, because they can't both be right. I know some of you are probably thinking maybe it's a decoupling between Bitcoin and the stock market. I know right now crypto bros and Bitcoin bros are going to be shouting, well, Bitcoin is going to replace the financial system and no one will care anymore about the stock market. Well, I'm sorry about that, guys, but this is what I think.
I don't believe that for a second.
Yeah, I think the cat is probably correct. Anyway, guys, my point simply is that I don't think both these charts can be correct. I don't think it's possible to have a bear market in the stock markets and have a bull market in Bitcoin. Okay, it's very unusual. Is it impossible? No. But I would need to see further evidence. I would need to see further proof of that. But I just don't think it's likely. As I said, I don't know which chart at the moment is giving us the correct picture. All right, guys? Is it Bitcoin or is it the stock market? The stock market is giving us a bear market signal as long as it stays below resistance. And the Bitcoin chart is giving us a bull market signal, looking very bullish. So again, both these charts, in my view, cannot be right. One of them is lying. And I don't know at the moment which one, but I think we'll find out in the next few weeks. I think in the next few weeks, we'll probably find out which chart is the correct picture, Bitcoin or the stock market. Now, as for the next potential targets for Bitcoin, well, as long as Bitcoin can stay above 29K, so you may recall in my previous video, I said the support was 26K. So I mentioned in my previous video on Saturday that Bitcoin has to stay above 26K to maintain the bullish picture. Okay, that's very important. And at the moment, the support is now being raised because this rally, the support is now not at 26K, but 29,500 or 30K. So as long as Bitcoin can protect and stay above 29,500 or 30K, then bulls could potentially push this a bit further to the next likely region of resistance, probably in this zone. Again, that's between 36K to 38K to 40K. So that's a probability for Bitcoin as long as it stays above 30K or 29,500. Okay, because as I mentioned before, if it breaks below support, it would increase downside risk. So if Bitcoin bulls are going to remain in control, so Bitcoin has to stay above 29,500 or 30K. By the way, guys, make sure you also watch my members video with the updated wave counts. And also in my next member video, we'll go into Bitcoin and the stock markets in much more detail as well. And if you're not a member, you can join that link you see right there. Thanks very much indeed. Bye for now.